Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. Mr. Secretary, great to have you with us. And let's begin. I don't know if you heard Pelosi, but as I just reported, she said no plans for a formal impeachment investigation vote at this time, which leaves open the question, what in the world are they doing down there then if they are not carrying out an impeachment investigation and giving everyone a vote?
Well, one thing they are not doing is approving the USMCA trade deal, which is something that would be very good for all Americans, for farmers, for industrial workers, for consumers, for everyone.
Yep.
So it seems as though they don't really want to take definitive action on anything.
Yeah, I think they've made it pretty clear, don't you? I mean, after basically a year, almost a year, 9 months in charge of the House of Representatives, they've done absolutely nothing to advance any program in the national interest that is authored by this administration. You mentioned the farmers. We learned today that the Chinese have decided they don't want to buy that $50 billion, $40 to $50 billion of agricultural products that had, we thought, been agreed to in the so-called Phase 1 as announced by the president. This is the second time, as you know, Mr. Secretary, that we have seen this regime of President Xi renege. And at this point, goes beyond misunderstandings. This is a position of President Xi, is it not?
Well, they actually had indicated that they would continue buying substantial amounts right now. The 40 to 50 billion, in fairness to them, was meant to phase in over a couple of year time period. So,
well, that wasn't made clear to anyone as far as I've read anyone's reporting, and including our own or my own. The idea that the 40 to 50 billion dollars was going to be phased in, as you put it, there's a communication problem here between the Chinese and the United States. It's pretty clear.
Well,
I don't know of another instance, Mr. Secretary, in which we have a trading partner making stated positions and the United States accepting those positions, and then twice within a 6-month period watching them renege. That is just about enough, isn't it?
Well, especially if it's true, and I don't know if it's true, that they've stopped making the purchases that they had done voluntarily just before the talks resumed. They had said when we were all in the Oval on Friday that they would continue the big purchases, particularly of soybeans and of pork, that they had started just before that. So if they're not, that really is a very specific renege.
Yes, and at this point, it is becoming fairly untenable, I would think. Adam Schiff, Mr. Secretary, I've got to apologize. Adam Schiff talking about the latest on their so-called impeachment inquiry.
Their duty, and people should make no mistake about that. They're doing exactly what they are required to do, and I think showing enormous courage. And I think we owe a great debt of gratitude to public servants like Ambassador Yovanovitch, who had to endure so many false smears on her character, and has continued to show the courage to come forward and speak to our committees. And we are also learning a great deal on the issue of conditionality. That is the effort to condition a White House meeting that was desperately sought by the Ukraine president in order to get a commitment from that president to do these political investigations on behalf of the president of the United States. So we're learning a lot about the conditionality of that meeting, and I want to underscore just how important that meeting was for Ukraine. It is, I think, at the very top ask of most countries to have a meeting with the president of the United States, but this is most particularly true for a country that has been invaded by its neighbor, Russia, that is in the midst of still a very hot conflict that is dependent on us economically, politically, diplomatically, militarily, to show that the new president had a good relationship with the president of the United States. And so that gave enormous leverage to President Trump to coerce what he wanted from the president of Ukraine. And what is so damaging about this is at the very time the State Department is trying to urge Ukraine to follow the rule of law, you have the President of the United States urging that president to engage in political investigations. You could not have a message.
Adam Schiff talking about quid pro quo there. And again, we're talking with Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. And Mr. Secretary, I want to apologize for interrupting, but also at the same time, we've just heard Adam Schiff basically announce something new, talking about the conditionality of a meeting with the president that was so important that it rises to the level of a quid pro quo, is the rest of his statement, at least the implication of it. This is getting to be thinner and thinner gruel by the day, isn't it?
Well, it's just like the Mueller thing. They keep changing their theory about what it is that he did wrong. Mueller finally went away. You don't even hear them talk about it anymore. Then they were saying,
especially the Democrats, but
yeah. Then they were saying there was a quid pro quo in the phone conversation. Now they know that's not true. So now they're inventing another thing, that a meeting was the quid pro quo. God knows what it'll be next. But the other thing that Adam Schiff, I was found amazing, he was saying how courageous these former staffers were in coming forward.
Right.
One guy who's not being courageous is the whistleblower. Still wants to remain anonymous. The whistleblower is, after all, who started this whole thing.
You mean the CIA officer who had third-party information and with that hearsay was moved to file a complaint in concert with the Adam Schiff committee?
Well, yeah, and the third-party information he had proved to be incorrect.
Right.
I think that's the real reason they don't want to expose him. And for them to say that their main objective is to preserve this guy's anonymity is incredible. An anonymous whistleblower with misinformation cannot be a basis for impeachment.
No, well, almost anything is apparently available to this committee. As the president has pointed out, they began by creating a dramatic scene as if it was from one of those screenplays that Adam Schiff had written as he suddenly relapsed into being a thespian instead of the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, reporting faithfully on what had transpired and the president's words from that transcript of that call, which, by the way, as the president said, it was perfect. I don't know if it was perfect, but it was absolutely exculpatory of any claim that could be made by any rational, reasonable person that there was a quid pro quo suggested, offered, or agreed upon. Let me finish our conversation, if I may, on the subject of China. Where do we go from here, and at what point? At what point are we going to accept the idea that the Chinese are not worthy of U.S. trust? I mean, this is absolutely mind-boggling to think that they would have reneged on this again at this stage.
In a couple of weeks, there will be very likely a face-to-face meeting between President Xi and President Trump out in Asia in connection with the ASEAN meetings. So sometime between now and then, this thing has got to get resolved one way or another, because originally the hope had been perhaps this phase one could be documented by then.
Yeah, we were told that it was going to be papered, I believe was the expression of both Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and the president. In fact, it's being papered over a bit. It seems to me that this is an impasse, and one which can, it seems to me, is hardly resolvable on Chinese terms.
There's one easy way to resolve it, which would be for the Chinese to resume the purchasing that they had been doing in the run-up to the talks last week. Respectfully,
Mr. Secretary, we're not an agrarian nation, and a deal over 1% I think this is getting to be a little embarrassing for this country to have to go through this. It's you know, the most advanced superpower on earth. With all of our advanced technology and all of our finished products that we're now manufacturing, with all of our industry, we come up with soybeans. I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, you've lost me on that one.
No, what I was saying is the best way for them to demonstrate that they're living up to the understanding that had been reached before would be to resume the purchases that they were doing as recently as last week.
Right.
That's the way to prove that their good intent is still there. Yeah. If they stop that, then I agree with you, you'd have to question it.
Yeah, I question anything which starts out with two failed agreements, both of which seem to be the Chinese reneging. I can't understand the point of the pursuit, frankly, on the part of the United States. Mr. Secretary, as always, it's great talking with you and appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Lou. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks for doing analysis on Adam Schiff and his remarks.